Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And today we're going to be looking at another interesting topic: Obama versus Trump, deportation, economic inequality, and the American empire. So, thank you so much for joining. And I hope that you will be coming in soon so that we can begin our live and end on time. The conventional story is that Obama represented a humanitarian approach while Trump represented a hardline approach. But when we examine deportations, border enforcement, foreign policy, and economic power, we find significant continuity between administrations. The question this evening is not whether Obama and Trump are identical. The question is whether both operated within a larger system of the American empire. So that's what we're going to be looking at this afternoon. Obama oversaw very high levels of removals and deportations, particularly during his first term. Critics refer to him as the deporter in chief. His administration expanded programs that linked local law enforcement with federal immigration authorities. Many families were separated due to deportation policies. The administration emphasized the removal of individuals categorized as criminals, but many immigration advocates argued the net was much broader. Obama's rhetoric was very different from Trump's, but for many immigrant families, deportation remained a reality. Trump adopted much harsher rhetoric towards migrants, expanded detention and enforcement measures, pursued restrictions and asylum access. Family separation policies became a major controversy, sought to end or limit protections for certain migrant groups, including some TPS recipients. Trump made immigration enforcement a central public spectacle, but enforcement itself did not begin with Trump. Okay. The Biden administration carried out deportation flights to Haiti. Human rights groups criticized deportations during periods of severe instability and insecurity. Images of Haitian migrants at the Texas border became internationally controversial. Many who expected a complete reversal of Trump-era policies were surprised to see deportations continued under Biden. Central America, we have Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. Historical context often cited by scholars and critics: decades of U.S. involvement in Central America, support for governments and actors during the Cold War, economic policies that contributed to displacement and inequality, violence, gang activity, and weak institutions became major push factors. Now, when immigrants arrive at the U.S. border from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, many Americans see only the border crossing. But the story often begins decades earlier with foreign interventions, economic restructuring, political instability, and violence. Haiti has experienced repeated foreign interventions. The 2010 earthquake triggered a massive international response. Numerous investigations and reports questioned the ineffectiveness and accountability of some aid efforts. Large portions of reconstruction funding were managed by foreign organizations and contractors rather than Haitian institutions. Critics argue that Haiti became a laboratory for NGO-driven development, where international organizations accumulated enormous influence while Haitian state institutions remained weak. Now, if aid bypasses local institutions for decades, does it strengthen a country or weaken its sovereignty? This is where we are talking about now in terms of the United States empire, what it really is. Now, before I delve into the topic, I want to ask a question. If Obama deported millions, Biden deported Haitians during a crisis, and Trump is pursuing even tougher measures, is the real issue the individual president or the system itself? Something that we've got to ask ourselves. Perhaps the debate is not Trump versus Obama. Perhaps the real debate is whether American immigration policy serves humanitarian principles or the interests of a global superpower seeking to manage labor, borders, and geopolitical influence. If the underlying system remains the same, changing presidents may alter the language, but not necessarily the outcome. One factual note: reports about TPS holders, asylum seekers, or migrants being transferred to third countries can involve different legal categories and court challenges. So this is what we're here to discuss in this afternoon's program. Now, before we get into the deportations and immigration policy, I want to revisit a debate that emerged around Obama's election. Much of the media presented his victory as a transformational moment in American history. Yet some commentators asked whether the focus on symbolism distracted from a more important question: would U.S. foreign policy, immigration, enforcement, and economic policy fundamentally change under Obama? That is what we have to look at this moment. Now, there was a very interesting article coming from the BBC newspaper that we would like to revisit, right? And it was asking here, U.S. had previous Black presidents. Barack Obama may not be, after all, the first Black president of the United States. According to research by several U.S. historians and a Jamaican scholar, Mr. Obama is actually the 7th Black person to become president of the United States. Now, this is a controversial topic, but something that we should remind ourselves about Barack Hussein Obama. U.S. Presidents Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Jackson, Warren Harding, Calvin Coolidge, and Dwight Eisenhower all had Black ancestry, according to recent articles published in several U.S. newspapers and on the internet website Diversity Inc. According to these reports, which are based on books by the late Jamaican historian J.A. Rogers, by African-American Leroy Vaughn, and others, Thomas Jefferson's mother was part Black, as was his father. Mr. Jefferson was described once by a political rival as the son of a half-breed Indian squaw and a Virginia mulatto father. To hide his Black past, the third president had all portraits of his mother, Jane, destroyed after her death, according to author Samuel Sloan. Under U.S. racial classifications, anyone who has even one drop of Black blood or has any Black ancestors, no matter how far in the past, is considered to be Black. Abraham Lincoln, America's 16th president, was nicknamed Abraham Africanus and described as having dark skin and coarse hair by his political enemies. After Lincoln freed the slaves in 1863, a political rival, Chauncey Burr, said sarcastically that Lincoln should be forgiven for showing natural sympathy with his own race. Andrew Jackson, America's 7th president, was, according to a 1921 article in Virginia Magazine of History, the son of an Irish woman who married a light-skinned Black man. Calvin Coolidge, the 30th president, is the only one of the presidents said to have Black ancestry to express pride in his non-white ancestry. Mr. Coolidge didn't admit to having African blood, though. He said, according to reports, that his mother had curly, dark hair and dark skin because she was part Indian. America's 34th president, Dwight Eisenhower, was the son of light-skinned Black people passing for white, according to a book by Osset Bakafu. So, of all the presidents said to be Black, Warren G. Harding, the 29th president, is the most intriguing. It's claimed he was the son of a part Black man and the great-grandson of a Black woman who came to America from the West Indies. A political enemy of Harding's, that's William Chancellor, began researching Mr. Harding's ancestry, according to a recent article by historian Beverly Gage, in the hope it could be used to lose him the 1920 election. According to this account, Mr. King, or Mr. Kling, a wealthy banker, did not attend his daughter's wedding nor speak to his son-in-law until 8 years after the marriage. And interestingly, Mr. Harding, who attended a college founded to educate Blacks, never denied he was Black. Asked if he had any non-white ancestry by a reporter, he replied, "Oh, do I know? How do I know?" He's asking Jim. "One of my ancestors may have jumped the fence." From time to time, Black people who claim they are relatives of Harding, that's Warren Harding, came forward. In 2005, a distant cousin of Harding's, Marcia Stewart, published a book called Warren Harding, U.S. President 29, Death by Blackness. She said she wrote her book because she did not want to keep the secret of Harding's Black ancestry any longer. At age 60, Marcia Stewart has lived long enough to see racial attitudes change dramatically in the United States. Ms. Stewart says she was contacted not long ago by Warren Harding's white grandchildren, whom, to her great surprise, wanted to find out about the Black side of their ancestry. So this is something rather interesting that we should revisit, right? Now that we're looking at Obama and what he stood for, and some people are claiming that he was the first Black president, but as we're learning, he might have been the 7th Black president of the United States. And perhaps they could have more, but that was what the BBC News actually reported. And of course, J.A. Rogers, they read the book, did do a fascinating report on the Black presidency of the United States, right? And we know that Obama was perhaps not the first Black president, according to what they've reported to us. Now, let's look at this very interesting article that was written by this commenter in the Counterpunch newspaper, Obama's Chicago eyesore. We know that Obama recently opened his foundation building, what some people call the Presidential Center in Chicago on the South Side. And he says here, any consideration of the newly opened Obama Presidential Center calls for a review of the Obama administration's record of action. The building and its grounds are inconceivable outside of this context, and the record will have to be given more attention. Revisiting the Obama policy program is surprising in that it shows how little has truly changed. The remarkable feature of this program in 2026 is its clear consistency with the lawlessness and authoritarianism of Donald Trump. Yet the tone and the packaging are clearly different. If Obama seems somewhat embarrassed to continue shredding the Constitution and governing by executive decree, Trump is proud of the office's unlimited power. This week, as this monument to the former president's ego opened for business, Donald Trump told Axios that there are no limits to his power. Obama says this isn't about nostalgia. Nostalgia for what, though? The politics of Donald Trump, but in sheep's clothing and explained away more politely and compellingly. Barack Obama might as well be a professional actor. The Barack Obama of the Obama Center and of the inspiring speeches around its opening has never existed as anything more than the expensive fabrication of political operatives and public relations hacks. The real man is another American emperor, more charming and erudite, but no less an instrument of the world's most destructive empire. It's almost as if Americans don't know that political power is about what one does rather than what one says. But we value appearances above all else, right? Because that's what Americans love. They like to act and they like to show many faces. Like the man himself, the Obama Center is pure storytelling artifice. It is gimmickry and branding. If the Obamas were trying to embarrass themselves and us, they couldn't have done better. The Obama Foundation told the project's architect that they wanted something iconic, which isn't how we've worked before. I don't think you can design something to be iconic. Noting that some compared the structure to a Clinton prison. The Guardian's architecture and the design critic writes, rising above the low-rise, low-income neighborhood, the building has an ominous presence. It's mostly windowless, heft, recalling a menacing sci-fi headquarters with small chamfered openings suggesting portals from where drones might be launched or lasers fired. The unwholesome thing already has a reputation for seeming funeral. Okay, discussing this need to appear deep and iconic, architectural record says. Unfortunately, metaphors, no matter how noble their aspirations, rarely translate legibly into architecture. Now, the actions of the US government during Barack Obama's two terms, that's 2009 to 2017, opened all people to real peril and perhaps fatally undermined the possibility of a free, fair society in this country in anything like the near future. These actions further eroded normative and legal constraints on executive power and on the public rhetoric of political leaders. If it does anything, the Obama Center reminds us that the social and political costs of the long list of the post 9/11 constitutional and human rights abuses are only now becoming clear and that we have not yet seen the worst. The Senate Selection Committee on Intelligence determined that pervasive secrecy around illegal detention, interrogation, and targeted killing programs reduced public corrective pressure, with norms degrading out of sight for years. We have a chance, if we want to reckon with the illegal and aggressive wars of choice based on cooked intelligence. And they're saying here, cooked intelligence and outright lies, with the government's endorsement of illegal indefinite detention and torture programs the world over, withstanding claims that no torture had ended, and with the normalization of secrecy, unconstitutional surveillance, and even the extrajudicial murder of American citizens. The outright horror of Donald Trump, and it is truly horrible, is an effect of decline and dissipation, not their cause. This is where a bloated, corrupt, and profoundly destructive imperial system lands a country and people. We have allowed our leaders to govern by permanent emergency for decades, shredding the Bill of Rights and violating international law with impunity. When we celebrate the Obama Center, we celebrate our own gullibility and lack of political power. We celebrate just those things that led us to this point in our history. Why do we do these things? No doubt many civil liberties groups and progressive media outlets condemned the Obama administration's murders of American citizens. But there was certainly no mass political or electoral condemnation or movement against Obama over this shocking break with precedent. So we wonder why people were not protesting against what Obama was doing then, but now they're doing it against Trump. His approval ratings remained high through the period of the story breaking. What could shock us now? Americans don't seem to care much about much of anything outside of popular culture, rabid, meaningless consumption, and appearing to be rich. Within this social context, a Donald Trump or someone similar was inevitable. It is clear that our failure to contest Obama's lawless and authoritarian practices on substantive grounds, our total inability to properly oppose his kill lists, ramped up deportations, and unconstitutional mass surveillance, further entrenched a political culture of mindless reality TV shows in which Trump could inherit and intensify these authoritarian apparatuses without real pushback. So Trump is just what? A symptom, not the root of the problem. The pushback is contained by the entertainment spectacle we mistake for politics. Contrary to popular belief across the US political spectrum, once Americans learned of the imperial presidency, there was a concerted movement to normalize these undemocratic authoritarian structures. Because Bush and Obama's deep material violations of the Constitution and our border political norms were not treated as red lines, the executive branch became even more powerful and insulated from accountability and political contest. Because Americans have not understood what we are watching play out. because we lack a real criticism of the state and our overall political economy, we have tended to direct our outrage at the symbolic and vibe-based. Everything is about the vibes, right? That the leader is actually displaying. Politics as a serial drama, but little more. We got Trump precisely because we were not and still are not prepared to face the real issues. As a lawyer for the Center for Constitutional Rights, told a federal district court at the time, and I quote, "Not only does the administration claim to have sweeping power to target and kill U.S. citizens anywhere in the world, but it makes the extraordinary claim that the court has no role in reviewing that power or the legal standards that apply," unquote. Many of our friends and neighbors slept through the warnings then. If they understand much better today, it is hard to know. And if they now see the connection between such open contempt for the American people and the Donald Trump era, then it is likewise difficult to say, as the ACLU said 10 years ago. Both the Bush and Obama administrations have consistently used claims of secrecy to shield from accountability the people who oversaw the CIA's torture program. In every case brought by victims, government lawyers demanded that the victims' claims to be dismissed at the outset as not to expose state secrets. As a senator and candidate, Obama criticized the Bush administration's use of secrecy to block lawsuits. But to the dismay of many, Obama's Department of Justice carried on the same policies. No difference. Barack Obama's immigration regime forcefully separated thousands of families, and outcome procedures by deliberate policy choices, regardless of whether the administration explicitly described what it was doing as a family separation policy. The Obama administration presided over 3.1 million ICE deportations, and millions of American children have a parent who is an undocumented immigrant. By even the most conservative estimates, many hundreds of thousands of families were separated through these record-breaking deportations. If Barack Obama's language and policy tools were not precisely those of Donald Trump, the outcome for these families was nonetheless separation. Calling Obama's policy something rather than it was is to indulge a fantasy and to create a distinction cynically for the purpose of papering over the horrors of such choices. As has become legendary, the Obama years were a boon for the top 1% of Americans in terms of wealth. Over his full tenure, both personal wealth and income either stagnated or declined for the vast majority of Americans, with the recovery deeply skewed to the top 1% and the top 10%, as the bottom 90% saw their share of all wealth decline. True to form, Obama paid lip service, identifying inequality as the defining challenge of our time, even as he oversaw these increases in inequalities of wealth and income. The point is not that these results are attributable only to Barack Obama or his choices. It is that he's only a representative of a political and economic system that largely doesn't notice or care who occupies the White House. Although we like to flatter ourselves by pretending that we live in unprecedented times, as to many of these core questions, we live in ordinary times, and our problems are the problems of old, heavily precedented, and even expected. The Obama Center is another monument to the power, greed, and profligacy of a criminal ruling class. It isn't the first or the last. It symbolizes not any socially progressive impulse, whatever progress means within our cultural context, but the contempt of the rich and powerful for people who work without rest and still can't afford the basic means of life. It is hypocrisy and self-congratulation made into a philosophy and a concrete building. The earliest budgets for the Obama monstrosity put the all in total at around 300 million US dollars. It has landed, at least for now, at 850 million US dollars, with at least 200 million of that coming from taxpayers. So the Obamas building there, the presidential center, costed him 850 million US dollars, just short of 150 billion dollars. When all is said and done, the price of this monument to the imperial presidency could be more than 1 trillion. This Obamalisk is a disgrace. It is an eyesore and evidence of our cultural sickness planted in a place with such deep need all around it. It is an open, shameless insult to the South Side of Chicago. Bad speeches naturally ensued at the opening ceremony. Michelle Obama, and she knows how to give her speech, right? How to render a speech, but that's all it is, empty speech. Michelle Obama said of Barack that he was always focused on the long view. But what long view? Or maybe whose? His 2 terms in office saw illegal acts of war in no fewer than 7 countries, mass deportations and cruel family separations, a hardening militarized police and surveillance state, and the most extreme inequality in human history. This shockingly ugly and offensive building is not a monument to choice, but to political oppression at home, empire, murder, and starvation abroad. It is a monument to steady attacks on free speech and expression and to ever worsening conditions of life for our neighbors. Like all of our political leaders, everything Barack Obama said in congratulating himself and his time in the White House, he contradicted with his actions during the same period. The embarrassing hypocrisy of the speech should be the story, but it won't be. The structure stands first and foremost for the socially destructive collusion between the state and capital. The foundation collected 6 donations of 50 million plus US dollars, one of which for 100 million US dollars came from Jeff Bezos. The notion of celebrating any of this would be anathema to a free and self-respecting people. But Americans celebrate what we're told to, when we're told to, and the Obamas are the good guys in the show. It is a show. It is theater. As noted, the critical reception of the structure has been harsh, notably so against the backdrop of elite self-satisfaction and celebrity fanfare. The Obama Center has shown its true face in spite of itself, a cold and forbidding face. As the New York Times says, and I quote, "That's a jarring vibe for a project whose most groundbreaking ambition is to reimagine the presidential library as a warm, welcoming community hub." It is the tallest monument yet to presidential self-glorification, its tower looming like a castle keep. It has elsewhere been likened to a blind, ominous alien spacecraft. And having visited the place, I can attest that it is even worse than the critics say. I'd suggest that this is the detached, unfeeling, unfinished product Barack Obama wanted, whether he knows it or not. Now, the tower is emphatically opaque, giving little hint of the spaces within. And its solid, sculpted silhouette, rendered at the request of a demanding client, suggests mass rather than volume. This works in tandem with its opacity to evoke a brooding, monolithic gravitas. That may be an unlikely look for the OPC's upbeat goal of inspiring people to change the world, but it seems eminently appropriate for a civic monument to a man who, like the tower, is famously aloof and inscrutable. This in keeping with Obama's real legacy. We misrecognize a man, his values, and his politics. Presented as an agent of change, he helped naturalize and cement the several overlapping crises that rack the country. Obama's vision for his monument could never have been fulfilled because force and authority cannot serve the values he claims. As the legal historian John Langdane put it, history's most important lesson is that it has been possible, or not been possible rather, to make coercion compatible with truth. Political power eventually shows itself for what it is: arbitrary violence and usurpation. So there is a sense in which these qualities had to express themselves in this structure. The truth has thwarted Obama again. He wants us to see this nightmare monument as a beacon of hope, but it reveals his legacy in spite of his wishes. The story, again, is his disconnect, the disharmony between an emperor's self-conception and the reality of what he has produced. Americans are confused about what the Obamas and Trumps of the world are there to do. But be assured that the Washington ruling class wages war on and occupies the lives of the domestic poor no less than it wages war and occupies foreign countries. Their class does not care that you are an American. You could be from Mars. They don't care. Those who dominate and exploit are members of the same group, and their solidarity is as strong as their contempt for ordinary people. Their divide and rule strategy works because we perceive them as being engaged in a pro-sports style contest with each other when they are in a permanent war against 99% of society. How much? 99% of society. Will we wake up or get in line for a ticket to the Obamalisk? Our confusion about what our rulers are there to do is reflected in our reactions to their monuments to power and domination. Someday, maybe, we will attain to an American leader who asks for a monument to genuine social transformation and regeneration, a monument of action in favor of the people whose work creates our society's prosperity, but who remain penniless still. Until that monument is built, every political leader and billionaire philanthropist ought to be ridiculed relentlessly and mercilessly in public. And we are not doing that. We're celebrating them for who they are. Aren't we doing that? And if that monument isn't on the agenda or the visible horizon, we can't very well blame the powerful for preferring to congratulate themselves and party with celebrities. We set Obama and Trump as opposites. We set them up as opposites, but maybe they're twins. We obsess daily about the sycophants in Trump's orbit, but this phenomenon does not have a political party, an ideology, a native tongue, or a country. We see it in the celebrity spectacle around Barack Obama, who is himself a mere celebrity, only another cult of personality. These are people to fear, certainly, but they are not people to praise. Their monuments don't belong to us, no matter how many reassuring words they offer. Right? So we're seeing here where Trump and Obama are similar. Right? We've seen where they have pursued similar policies. We've seen where what they're doing, they're militarizing, as it were, immigration and migrants. So what we're seeing now, we're seeing almost asylum seekers and those who are seeking some form of refuge in a country that has caused much pain and suffering in the world. They are now being described as criminals. So we're seeing now that Trump has defrocked the TPS from Haitians, and I understand that about over 300,000 Haitians are about to be deported to their country. Now, I'm sure that they're not going to be deported to their country. They're going to be deported to third country. We're hearing that Jamaica and other countries are not, including the DR, are not going to accept Haitians, but we can almost rest assured that they are going to do so. Because where are these over 300,000 Haitians going to go? They're certainly not going to remain in the United States. And the United States has to place them somewhere other than Haiti, right? So they talk a lot, and then we are the ones who have to ensure that they are doing what they are sent there to do, okay? Now, there is another piece here from the NPR that says, according to the NPR, Obama shapes his legacy through presidential center built on hope and change. And that's what he said, that his campaign was built on: hope and change. The Obama Presidential Center opens to the public today, a day after dignitaries, celebrities, and 3 former presidents attended its dedication. While not a presidential library, the Obama Center is trying to do what most actual presidential libraries do: shape a former president's legacy, and that is what they are actually doing. Now, somebody was interviewing, you had here an interview between Whitmer and Guania, Tina Chen, and she was a veteran of the Obama White House and is now vice president of the Obama Foundation. And the question that was being asked is, now the museum, they have a museum there at the Obama Center, will be the epicenter of how Obama is remembered. His legacy as a candidate and office holder who sought to bridge racial divides and promote inclusiveness is viewed in the context of his successor, Donald Trump. Voters turned to Trump in 2 of the 3 presidential elections that followed Obama's time in office, and Trump's attacks on Obama, beginning during Obama's first campaign for president, continue to this day. Trump was neither invited nor did his name come up at yesterday's dedication. Nonetheless, there are rebuttals like this from former First Lady Michelle Obama. And this is what Michelle Obama said, right, during her speech to the audience. She says here, and I quote, "The lies about your birthright, your faith, your patriotism, the outrage when you stated the biological fact that if you'd had a son, that he too would be black, yet you were unflappable at every turn, always focused, always calm, always looking at the long view." Now, what long view was Obama looking at? Okay, what long view was he looking at? Now, Obama is saying here, and I quote from Obama the day when his presidential center was open, "We can learn from the past, but America's story isn't frozen in the past. It has chapters yet to be written, not by one person or a few people, not by Barack and Michelle or anybody with a fancy title or high office, but by all of us." But does he mean that? Does Obama mean that the story of America is going to be written by all Americans? Or is it going to be written by the victors, the ones who write the history? Now, these are some of the important questions that we need to ask ourselves, because this is a very, very important matter, a very important discussion here, because what we're seeing is that we're looking at the system as opposed to personalities, as opposed to characters. And that is often what we like to do, or what the narrative that is being presented to us every day on the media centers and platforms. Now, let's look at some of the mega donors who funded the Obama Foundation, right? So Amazon was one of them. We mentioned that already. And there are some others that we are going to be looking at right now, telling you where this huge amount of money, where Obama got this huge, gigantic, enormous sums of money from to be able to build such a colossal building, while many Americans, right, are starving in terms of not being able to afford the day-to-day things that would make them comfortable, right, including housing. They're not able to afford basic housing in America, yet their presidents are building these large foundations costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So the Obama Presidential opens what donors should people know about the Obama Foundation. Now, this month, the Obama Presidential Center will officially open its door on Chicago's South Side, marking the culmination of nearly a decade of planning, fundraising, and construction by the Barack Obama Foundation. The center's grand opening ceremony is scheduled for June 18th, and we know that that has already happened, right? And they're telling us that there are lots of donors who have contributed to the launching of and the building, the construction of his gigantic, right, what some people term as an eyesore. So we know that Jeff Bezos, as I said, he actually pledged and gave $100 million to that foundation. And as we read in the article before, they are suggesting that the entire building costed about $850 and I'm on $1 million, that is. And I understand that a lot of the contractors are having problems getting their money. Can you imagine? With all of that money that was collected, the contractors that helped to build the building, right, are having problems being paid for the job that they were asked to do. Right. So when we look at the entire system, we're seeing that, whether Trump trying to rebuild or to remodel, okay, the White House, there's no difference. Right? People are just thinking that it's only Trump that is trying to be, a king and who wants to also to hobnob with the rich and famous. But we know that Obama too was very well known for that as well. And we have here that on time, yes. And there are two sides to, as you're saying, to the story. Absolutely. And this is what we have to understand, ladies and gentlemen. We're not living in a time where we can say that what X is better and we're dealing with the better of the two demons or the better of the two presidents, right? None is better than the other. What we're seeing here is a system at full, clearly we're seeing a system that is actually trying to enslave us. All right. Now, what do you think? Because we're not going to be here long. I told you to come on time. What do you think about what the entire Obama tenure? And what do you think? Do you think there is a solid difference between Obama's time and what we're seeing now with Trump, particularly as it relates to migration and the fact that people are being deported right, left, and center? Do we think that that was just a Trump policy, or were these policies rooted and grounded in policies of yesteryear? Please let me know what you think, so that in the discussion, I think I've laid the foundation for you. I have told you what I think, and you now can let me know what you think. Any thoughts? Any thoughts on the matter? What do you think about the whole matter of the BBC's report about Obama being perhaps the seventh Black president? What is your view on that matter? What is your view on that matter of Obama actually being perhaps the seventh Black president of the United States? We have that Eisenhower. We had others like Abraham Lincoln. They're even saying the third president that was what's his name? The one that was one of them who wrote the Constitution, Thomas Jefferson, right? Thomas Jefferson. All of these people they are describing were part Black, right? As they're suggesting. There was also another very interesting piece that came out of the U.S. Today. That's the USA Today, that I'd like to share with you, because these are some very important facts and reflections, I should say, that these people are presenting. Some very serious thinking people and critically minded people are actually telling us. Obama's presidential center is a disaster like his presidency. And this was a sort of reflection of what they did during their 2 terms in office. That's Barack Obama. Now, former President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle are opening the Obama Presidential Center on June 19th in Chicago, which happened some time ago, an 8-story shrine to themselves built largely at everyone else's expense. The day before, a star-studded crowd, Bill and Hillary Clinton, Stevie Wonder, John Legend, they like all of this sort of, what we call them now, celebrity status meetings and gatherings, gather to celebrate the sprawling 19-acre campus, complete with a public library branch, basketball court, restaurant, playground, and ticketed museum. Despite the glitzy fanfare, the monstrosity stands as a monument to hypocrisy and the Obama's unrelenting hunger for the spotlight, a legacy project for a presidency that disappointed more Americans than its architects care to admit. The project, honoring one couple, cost, right, $850 million to build, the most expensive presidential center ever constructed. And it isn't close. Can you imagine? Just $150 million short of $1 billion that was used to construct what you call a foundation presidential center, whatever they call it. My understanding is that they are no longer calling these things presidential library, because Barack Obama was the first, what we call now online digital president, right? Because others, we didn't have the digital world at that time where you could have digital libraries. So now you don't need to have presidential libraries, because all his documents, his speeches, everything that he did, and his papers, the presidential papers, can all be documented. They can all be digitalized, right? Or digitized, if you will. While the buildings and exhibits were financed through private donations, Illinois taxpayers have spent approximately $123.3 million US dollars on infrastructure, road reconfigurations, utility relocations, with that figure expected to approach $200 million by completion, at a time when many Americans are suffering. And remember that Barack Obama went to office in 2008, and he gave 2009, I should say, and he actually gave money to the Wall Street guys, the same ones who caused the economic decline in 2008, the financial collapse of 2008. He gave them money, right? And they have not given back taxpayers back money. And many Americans lost their jobs, lost their homes, their properties during that time. Nearby residents say construction drove rents up to 43%. So constructing the monument that he has there in Southside Chicago has raised the rent of people in that neighboring area to about 43% and pushed home prices higher. The Obama Foundation, which had hoped to establish a $470 million endowment, currently holds only about $1 million in endowment funding. The project has also been a nightmare for local workers and subcontractors who say they're still owed money. I repeat that. The project has also been a nightmare for local workers and subcontractors who say they're still owed money, the opposite of the economic boost they were promised. Mike Owen, owner of Adamson Plumbing, says he's owed almost $4 million after years on the job. That is a hole that no subcontractor, small business can survive, Owen told Fox News Digital. Right? Omar Sharif, president of the African American Contractors Association, so these are Black people, says his contractors are owed money and feel silenced by non-disclosure agreements they signed to. So he can't talk because of the non-disclosure agreements that they had signed off to. Now, this is your Black president that you say Black people are wonderful and they're nice. I've never seen this happen since I've been in business, Sharif told Fox News Digital. The building does look nice, but the fact doesn't matter that they're not paying our D contractors. All right, you know what that D word stands for. The Obamas were likely not involved in day-to-day construction operations, but the project was built at their behest. So they should ensure that the workers are paid. The Obama Foundation hired Lakeside Alliance as construction manager. In a statement, Lakeside Alliance said that it was common for outstanding balances to remain after a project is completed and that it's committed to resolving any issues. Now, the Obama Presidential Center is run by the Obama Foundation itself, an arrangement that says everything about what this project really is, less a public institution than a monument to ego. The Obama left the House in 2017, or the Obamas, nearly a decade ago, yet they can't even seem to resist the spotlight. They love the spotlight, like to feel as if they're king and queen. Former First Lady Michelle Obama has written multiple books. And remember now, according to their status, people are going to buy their books because they want to get into the gossips and what they did and all of that stuff. And made regular appearances on podcasts and talk shows. And the algorithm is going to push their content along. In a recent interview on Good Morning America, Barack Obama said that when it comes to public policy debates, he has transitioned from player to coach. If by player he means building a nearly $1 billion shrine to his own presidency, sure, that's one way to stay relevant, right? But the legacy he's enshrining deserves scrutiny. The Affordable Care Act, ACA, his signature achievement, drove healthcare premiums, deductibles, and out-of-pocket costs sharply higher for millions of Americans, hardly the transformation he promised. What drives the Obamas to build such a monument is the belief, fed by years of sycophancy, that their legacy rests on genuine achievement. So they're delusional. It's a stunning conceit. Obama made history as the first Black president, even though that is contestable, and he remains a gifted communicator. But beyond that, the record is thin. If the Obamas' accomplishments were truly memorable, they wouldn't need a hideous $850 million building, one that stiffed contractors and billed taxpayers to prove it. The Presidential Center is a perfect monument to Obama's presidency itself, a grand gesture lavishly executed that promised transformation and delivered disappointment. Wow. So this is where we are now in the grand scheme of things. Obama has betrayed us, yet he is a Black president. He's a Black man. And shouldn't we be happy that he was there for how many years? 2 terms in office, right? And he actually did nothing to steer and to correct some of the problems that America was facing, or Americans were facing. Instead, he exacerbated these problems. And now what we're seeing, we're now comparing Trump to Obama. And I understand that Obama's approval rating is still at 57%. That's high for an ex-president who has left office 10 years ago. It means, therefore, that should he, if the Constitution permits him or would permit him to do, he would go back to power and Americans would still vote for the man, even though his stick, right, is still there and he's an imperial president. But we don't care, do we? Or are we properly informed? And that is the whole matter, that many of us are not so much properly informed so that we can make good and correct, wise decisions. Let us hear some of what you have to say. Who were the first 6 Black presidents? Yeah, we're going to go back to that. Can I go back to the 6 that I was telling you about? On the I think I took off the BBC report here. Let's go back to the 6 that they told us. This is a BBC report, Alexis, and let me go back through it again since many of you are just joining. U.S. had previous Black presidents, and this is coming from the BBC, right? And it's a Caribbean, the section of the Caribbean news. And it says, U.S. had previous Black presidents. Barack Obama may not, after all, be the first Black president of the United States. According to research by several U.S. historians and a Jamaican scholar, Mr. Obama is actually the 7th Black president to become president of the United States. So we won't read the article, the entire article. So let me tell you the 6. Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Jackson, Warren Harding, Calvin Coolidge, and Dwight Eisenhower. And I've always known about particularly Abraham Lincoln and Eisenhower, right? Those were 2 presidents that people really knew. When you look at them, just look at them and you'll see that they are mixed, right? So we have, this is what the report says, based on an exhaustive study done by other researchers, including this famous Jamaican scholar and African-American scholar that I call Vaughn. Is it Vaughn? I think I saw the name here. Let me see if I can Remember the name of the African-American scholar who went through that sort of report. So let us report the names again. The presidents again who might have Black ancestry, and some of them might also have had indigenous ancestry. So we have Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Jackson, Warren Harding, Calvin Coolidge, and Dwight Eisenhower. Now you can also check with the scholars here. We had the scholar was Rogers, J.A. Rogers, and you can also look at. So go in on. Let me write here. Let me write his name here for you to see. J.A. Rogers. J.A. Rogers. Right. So this is a scholar that you can check, and the other name of the individual that is another African American. Well, he's a Jamaican scholar. He lived in the United States for many years, though. I read portions of his book, and we have African American Leroy Vaughn. All right, so Leroy Vaughn, you can check out on the web, right, to read your own for your own. Let's not believe everything we hear, right? But we want to make sure that we are informing ourselves and we're doing our own investigation. Now, WHZ saying it is the same policy, just executed slightly differently. Absolutely. Trump's policy has a more racial and nationalistic overtones. But when we look also at what happened during the Obama presidency, a lot of the people that he actually sent home were people of color, right? Latinos and a lot of Caribbean people, right? So it's all the same. Right? It's still because American system is racial. So whether it's Obama or it is Trump, what is happening is that we just get up every morning and we listen to what people say, and Trump is racist and Trump is racist, but we don't know that Obama also was equally racist. And his policies were equally racist if they are properly studied. But they were hidden, right? And because of that, we saw him as the black man. So how can a black man be racist? That's the question we were asking. So that is why we never paid much attention to what he was doing. Please send the live. With the algorithm doesn't want to send the live. So please send the live and share it with as many people on the platform. Thought you wanted to have this discussion. With WHZ says Obama tried to have a more inclusive immigration policy and tried to keep families together. No, that is what we are saying that he did not. He separated a lot of families because what he did was that he criminalized many families. So what he was doing, rather, he was saying those who were illegal, right? He was not trying to make them legal, but he criminalized them and he sent them home as criminals. Trump, on the other hand, what he's doing on the contrary, he's sending home legally people who have legal status, like the TPS, right? They should be able to stay because they are on asylum and America gives them some special, right, immigration status. But Obama, on the other hand, because they never had status and he wasn't willing to give it to them, he gave some, but not all of them, right? And which they could if they want to do. What they're doing, just like the national security, the wars that are being waged in the world, they are using these wars and the immigration policy to weaponize against Americans and other people to take away our civil liberties, right? So there will never be a time in which America's immigration laws are properly dealt with. Never. Because America has to use it, just like the wars, to keep the empire going, right? To militarize the entire country and to extract and to take away the civil rights of Americans and the world in general. Trump is direct and upfront about the racial overtones. Yes, but we can't always look at, in fact, maybe we should like him for being direct and open, right? It is when they are covert and they're silent and we call them snakes that we have to be very mindful of these people, because they can affect our status. They can take away our liberties at the flash. Right, so this sounds like a targeted and negative narrative of Obama. No, you can read it, right? There are many books on Obama. Go and read them, right? And there are many books that have been written about the Obama's presidency and what he has done. There is absolutely no target, because what we're saying here, Alexis, is that he is actually a part of a system. He's essentially an imperial president. He was, right? Just like Biden, just like what's his name, George W. Bush, and all of them, they belong to what you call imperial presidency. Now, when we say imperial, and I think some people think empire is this great thing, right? We don't understand that empire means that they are going to kill, to steal, to plunder. That's what Great Britain did. That's what France did. That's what Spain did. And the United States was founded that it would not be that, because that was what the founding fathers feared, that the United States would eventually morph into an empire, because they knew that once it launches into empire, the entire system of freedom is going to be totally destroyed, right? Let me see if I can get you some statements here on the founding fathers and what they thought of empire, all right, of an empire, because we need to educate ourselves and get away from, black presidency, and because he looked black and his wife looked black and all of that stuff, right? Those are for children. We want to look at policies and look at how these policies have affected us, right? So let us look at some of the U.S. founding fathers' point of view on what an empire is all about, what it does, because I think some of us don't understand. So U.S. founding fathers' statements on empire, right? On empire, because we are here to have stimulating and uncomfortable discussions, right? Because that's what intellectualism is about, right? Now, we have here the founding fathers' key quote. We're going to look at some of them, and I think I can send you some of them. Just be patient. I'll just send you some of the quotes in the chat so you can see what I'm saying, because we don't want here to leave here and we're trying to spread rumors or any accusations against Obama. These are things that we lived. Remember, we lived through all of this. Remember, we had, what do you call it now? I'm not able to, let me read some of them because I'm not able to cut and paste here now. Thomas Paine says, in America, the rule of law is king. But where says some is the king, okay, of America, I'll tell you, friend, he reigns above and does not make havoc of mankind like the royal brute of Britain. I repeat that. In America, this is Thomas Paine saying it, the rule of law is king. But where says some is the king of America, so he's suggesting if you're saying that the president is king, which, by the way, George Washington wanted to be king. For those of you who don't know, George Washington, the first president of the United States, wanted to be America's first king. But the other founding fathers sort of pushed back, right, against what he was trying to do, because that was they were men of their times, right? And that was what was the thing in most countries, in all countries, particularly in the West, to be kings, and also in the East. I'll tell you, friend, he reigns above and does not make havoc of mankind like the royal brute. They were calling Britain brute because of their system of monarchy. Now, Thomas Paine is also saying here again, in America, I think I read it already. Thomas Jefferson, I should say. Let us go to Thomas Jefferson. To give praise which is not due might be well from the venal, but would seem, wow, this language is really ancient, those who are asserting the rights of human nature. They know and will therefore say that kings are the servants, not the proprietors of the people. So they're suggesting here that America was not going to be founded on that system of monarchy. Now, Alexander Hamilton says the person of the King of Great Britain is sacred and inviolable. There is no constitutional tribunal to which he is amenable, no punishment to which he can be subjected without involving the crisis of a national revolution. This is what Alexander Hamilton said. And if you look at that, that's what exactly is happening to these presidents of the United States, that they're now becoming untouchable according to the laws that they have set up for themselves. Alexander Hamilton, the president of the United States, would be an officer elected by the people for 4 years. The King of Great Britain is a perpetual and hereditary prince, right? And that is what we're seeing. That's why they're building these lofty monuments, right, as they are, because they think that they are king. They think that they are what? They are kings. And that is what we have to push back against, because when we do that and we restore the monarchy, what's going to happen afterwards? We're going to find ourselves enslaved, right? Now, John Adams is saying here, liberty must at all hazards be supported. We have a right to it and derived from our maker, not from the people that we're seeing that they're telling us that they are kings and, and that they can do whatever they want to do, like the Trumps and the Obamas. And we know that Obama trampled also a lot on the United States Constitution. He did, right? Many documented sources are there to let us know that. Alexis is saying, what are the records of the other 6 black presidents? Let me send you you can go and study it for yourself, but I'm going to send you the BBC report. I told you about J.A. Rogers and also Vaughn Leroy, that he is African-American, right? And there are other people who have written about it too. Their names are not coming to mind, so I'm sending it to you right now, and you can do your own research, right, at your own time. Then we have Slimy Show is saying, it looks good, it looks goose. I don't know what you're saying here. And then we have here, that building is a monstrosity. It is, right? It is a monstrosity of a building that he's built for himself. And we're not saying that presidents do not, have the right to build buildings, right, that will document, the things that they have done, their achievements over the years, or even the lack of achievements. But what we're saying here, the sheer amount of money that was spent on building this monstrosity in Chicago, in Southside Chicago, is not something at the moment that is sending a good picture. We're seeing also that even subcontractors, including black subcontractors, were actually not paid, even though Obama invested millions of dollars in this sort of industry, right? In this sort of building. Leroy Vaughn, yes. And then WHZ saying, USA did not have any previous black presidents other than Obama. What they're trying to do is ascribe failures in the American system to these supposed black or mixed race presidents. No. Remember now that this has already, J.A. Rogers lived maybe in the late 19th century to the early, 20th century. He died probably in the 1940s, 50s. I think J.A. Rogers died that time, and he was already suggesting that. I'm not sure how long Leroy Vaughn lived for, but we must understand that these were facts known to people long ago. And we read you to the fact that their opponents, and some of them, just like the Coolidge, he admitted that he was. Right? He admitted that he was. So the fact of the matter is, yes, they do have black, or not only black, but indigenous ancestry. Now, there was also another video that was done by a botanist, a botanist from a British botanist, and he was suggesting that he did years of research in the South of America, and he's saying that 90% of Southern whites in the United States of America have black blood. Now, that is to me logical. How can you have a country in which black people and other peoples, indigenous peoples, have lived for centuries? Some of them were there before the whites came. How do you think they've never procreated? We know that that was something very, very ubiquitous during slavery, that the slave masters would impregnate, right, their slaves. So we know that a lot, even when you go to the to Louisiana, and there have been lots of research on that, lots of the people that pass for white in Louisiana have black blood, right? So this is nothing new in America. Many white Americans have black blood, have other ethnic groups within their DNA. Right? We are the only ones who tend to be, forthright with it, because they just say that we're people of color, right? And that is how it works. But this is not to negate the fact that Barack Obama was the first, or what is deemed to be the first, black US president, right? Before, there were research, there have been controversies even before he became president, long before he became president, long before he probably even went to college, right? And he was born, that there were other black presidents in the United States of America. But America will not tell you that. Why? Because as you're suggesting, they want to downplay. That's what you should be saying now. They want to downplay the contributions of Black people to American society. Right? So because they want to do that, and not only the presidency, there are other Black people who have also worked in U.S. Congress and have had high. Look at the guy there for the FBI. What's his name again? The Edgar Hoover, right? J. Edgar Hoover. Am I calling his name correctly? He was also Black, right? But he passed for white. Yeah, the CIA director, the first CIA director was Black. And that's why he went after Marcus Garvey, because he couldn't have Marcus Garvey there having this sort of prominent status in America, and yet he was the head of the FBI, right? So he was very, very strident that Marcus Garvey had to go. And this is a Black movement that was accelerating in the United States during the 1920s, moving on to the 1930s, right? So these are facts. These are things, these are some uncomfortable truths, and they shouldn't be uncomfortable because most of us are people of color on this platform, I believe. So we should be proud that even though they have been trying to hide our contributions, even at the highest level of the American society, but we have contributed. And when they're telling us that Obama was the first Black president, it was almost to shut down. It was to shut down all conversations on Blackness and where we ought to be in the American society. So they wanted a new conversation about this multiculturalism and its contribution to modern America. That is what they wanted, okay? And that is what they are actually getting. Please share the live with as many people on the platform. Any other comment any other question about Barack Obama and his tenure as president of the United States of America? Now, we have suggested here that Obama was not the great president that many people are suggesting that he was, that he oversaw an immigration system that he could have improved on if he wanted to, if he had the testicular fortitude, but he did not want to do that. That was not his plan. His plan was to really actually create situations in Central America that has created what the immigration flow to America right now as we see. For example, let's look at Haiti in 2010, when after that earthquake. If Obama had dealt with that earthquake in the way how it should have been dealt with in the rebuilding process of Haiti, right, then Haitians would not have to be migrating to the United States and to other places of the world, right, to the DR, to Brazil, to wherever they're going. We would not be in the current crisis. Another thing he did during that Haitian crisis also was the fact that he appended a revolution in Honduras where the president was giving his people, wanted to give his people $1 more, right, for minimum wage. Just $1. Just $1 the president wanted to give to the working class because they were complaining that they weren't surviving based on the economy. And Obama, through his Secretary of State, his then Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, decided to have a coup against that president, right? And what happened afterwards? We saw lots of Hondurans leaving and going to the United States because the state actually became chaotic, right? So a lot of the Obama policies were actually responsible for the huge migrant population that we see moving to the United States. If you look at Jamaica, for example, too, Jamaica, they were telling under Obama had a problem with debt, right? And they sort of forced the IMF to create a sort of policy, draconic policy, that created the most austere IMF program in the history of the IMF. The most austere IMF program in the history of Jamaica was actually imposed on Jamaicans in 2013 under the Obama administration. What happened? Many people also left. because they could not deal with that sort of economic pressure. Their jobs were not there for them. The dollar had declined. Many other problems, insurmountable, what do you call it now? Problems with crime and violence. And at the same time, Obama was sending home lots of deportees to the Caribbean, saying that they were criminals. Right? They were criminals. He criminalized the entire system and said that they're criminals. So that's what they're saying now, that Obama sent home more criminals than Trump. What Trump is doing, which is very weird, he's sending home legally protected status migrants, the TPS, right? Asylum seekers, which America has never done, really. Right? Because these things can take years, but Trump does not want them in the country. So he's sending them to third countries. Okay, so we can see that is exactly what happened. Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. We're here to learn, and we're here to help each other to understand the world in which we live. WHZ saying they will ascribe failures in the American system to these supposed Black presidents. I don't think they can ascribe any failure. I think we're looking at the system. The system is failed, right? The system is a failed system. So whether it was Eisenhower or it was Thomas Jefferson who actually endorsed slavery, and he was part Black. Remember now that when you look at history is filled with contradictions. When you look at Hitler was part Jew. Now, Hitler was anti-Jew, even though he was part Jew, right? When you look at the Dominican Republic and under Trujillo said that he hated Haitians. He was anti-Haitians, right? Yet Trujillo was part Haitian. How can you be part Haitian and anti-Haitian? So these are the contradictions that we're seeing. Thomas Jefferson, as we're seeing, was perhaps part Black, yet still he endorsed slavery, and some of the others. So this is what we're saying here, that there are many contradictions in history and in human behavior that if we understand them is something that we won't take personal offense at. Right? So we're not saying Obama was the worst president. Neither are we saying that he was the best president. What we're trying to do here, we're trying to look at the policies that he also designed that created this the moment that we find ourselves now dealing with. Right? So this is what we're saying. Any other response? Any other question? Any other question? All right, so this is it. I don't want to spend a long time here. I did tell you to come to the thing early. You said you wanted the live. You allowed me to waste my time to come to see 12 people on the live. You know, ladies and gentlemen, you have to do better than this. If our lives are going to continue, you have to do better than you're doing, because the lives are just going to, the algorithm is just going to kill this video. It goes to the algorithm and the algorithm just kills it. Right? So you've got to do a better job than what you're doing if the lives are going to continue. We might not have to continue live because it's going to kill the channel if you're going to just not show up. Right? So you have to do better. And don't say you want to come, then you don't come at the time. Ask for the time, you just said the time, I come to the live, and then you're not behaving responsibly. Okay? And this is a very important topic, so make sure that you share the live and you like it, so that at least we don't know. The algorithm is definitely going to kill it, but because it's not going to promote things like these, which will help the people to understand what we are actually going through. Any questions? And if not, then I think I will end it here. Okay, thank you so much for joining. I'll see you in another one. Bye. Bye.